Hi peeps, I'm Rebecca. I'm here to talk to you today about rotary cutting because it seems like sometimes we get so caught up in what's the new and latest thing that we forget about the basics. And rotary cutting is one of the absolute basics that is really important, not only for the accuracy of your quilting, but also because these tools are dangerous weapons. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools, and then we will get to actually cutting and some of the tricks that I use to be successful at it. Obviously, rotary cutters are the first thing. Excuse me there. This one is a 60 millimeter standard rotary cutter. This is a 60 millimeter or ergonomic rotary cutter. And this is a 45 millimeter quick change rotary cutter. We also have a Creative Grids one that I personally have not used, but lots of people are telling me that they love it because number one, it has this little button that you can slide back and forth that will allow you to cut with either side of the blade, which is kind of cool if you need to switch hands. And also because it's kind of heavy, and people find that that added weight decreases the amount of pressure that they have to put on their rotary cutter. So just to show you the difference between the standard rotary cutter and the ergonomic one, you'll notice that when I go to cut with this, well, number one, this is not the factory approved height of a cutting table, but you can still see that my wrist, in order to get the right angle to cut, my wrist sort of bends. That puts a lot of extra strain on your wrist and also on your hands. And if you're cutting at a higher table, it also causes you to lift your shoulder up. So a lot of people prefer this ergonomic one, which is nice because it has this little lock feature. When it's locked, you can still press on the handle and it will not open, which is a good safety feature. But when it's open, you notice that, well, I'm left-handed, I'll show you right-handed. You notice that in order to get the right angle to cut, my wrist is straight. And that is really the ideal position because then it allows all of the pressure to pass all the way up your arm and be dissipated as opposed to collecting in your wrist and your hands. The quick change rotary cutter is pretty cool for the other features. You can, these little buttons here are slide buttons. You press down and then slide, and it opens half of the guard so that you can cut with either side, which again is a nice feature if you switch hands or if you need to turn around. But the most unique thing about this is this little snap in the back, which when you push it allows your blade to just drop out, which makes it really easy to change blades. Then you can just very carefully take this out, replace the blade, dispose of the blade in an appropriate manner, and then you just slide this back in. It'll click in place, and then you just slide that, and that's how you change the blade. It's a really neat concept, neat idea, and worked great, and I love it. These ones are a little bit more complicated to change, and the way I do that is this nut, you have to unscrew it, and then it has this little spring, which it looks actually like just a little washer. But in order to make sure that I put it in the right, facing the right way, I just lay everything out in a line. And that's how I know what order everything goes in. Again, you can just pick this up and replace the blade. It goes on that side of the guard, okay? And then I just put these things back on in the order that they came off in. And that way I know that the little springy washer is facing in the right direction, which actually can make a difference in how the cutter cuts. That's how you change those. The next tool, of course, is the mat. Rotary mats are magical mats. They say they're self-healing. They're not really. You actually do cut them, but they don't show that wear as long as you don't cut all in the same place all the time. Right here you can see where somebody has been cutting on this mat a lot, in right at that 36-inch line, and there's a little divot here. I'm going to show you how to avoid those. Next, we have rulers. We like here at the Bee, we like the Creative Grids rulers because they have already on the back these little circles that are a rough surface that really help reduce the sliding that you get with rulers, and they're on all of the back of those. But if you don't have Creative Grids, if you have a ruler that doesn't have those little slidey things, these things are awesome. They're little rubber circles. You can kind of see. And they also have, they're the big donut circles, the little inside circles, and you can cut the background into little pieces like we've done here on this mat, if you can see, and just use that too. That works perfectly well. Okay, now we're going to get to actual cutting, and I have a few little things to show you. All right, sometimes you will notice that when you get a yard of fabric, even though the edges are cut straight, you'll notice that it's hanging such that there's kind of a little bow there, so that it's not really hanging straight. That just means that the fabric is not on the straight of grain. Okay, so what you do is you just slide the selvages along together until you get it to hang straight like that. That's your fold line that you're going to be using to cut from, and that's the most important thing, is to make sure that it's on the straight of grain. Okay, so when I lay my fabric down here, I grew up using this rotary cutter, so that's the standard that I'm going to use. I want to show you, the stickies are on this side of the ruler, but I'm going to show you first how easily this slides around when there's nothing grippy on it, as opposed to when there is something grippy. I mean, I can shake the whole table without it moving very much. You wouldn't believe what a difference that makes in how secure you feel in cutting. Now, when you get to finally cutting, you want to line up one of the inch markings on your ruler with the fold in your fabric. You always want to cut using the measurements on the ruler, not the measurements on the mat. You can turn the mat over so there are no markings on it at all, and it works just as well. The measurements on the mat are not as accurate as the rulers are, and also like I said, if you keep using the same measurement at the same place, if you're always cutting 6-inch strips, you're going to get a divot in that cutting line in your mat, and after a while that will ruin your mat, so you don't want to do that. So you want to line up your, say, 1-inch line with the edge of your fabric. You're almost always, well, let's just say always, going to want to do a clean cut that will ensure that your fabric is on the straight of grain and that your edges are straight. So you've lined up your ruler, you take your cutter in hand, and you start, it's best to start inside your cut, inside the edge, and go backwards a little bit before you go forwards. Notice that my blade is exactly perpendicular to the ruler. That's very important, because if you have it angled one way or the other, it can affect the accuracy of your cuts. So I make the cut nice and easy, and as I go along, I spider walk my hand up the ruler. That helps make sure that your tension on the cut is always the same, and that the ruler won't shift. You don't want to slide your hand, because clearly that'll slide your ruler, right? So you don't want to do that. All right, some other things to be aware of. I did talk about the rotary cutter and you know, how to change the blades and everything. But I do want to emphasize, the rotary blades are razors. They're very dangerous. And although I personally would not quilt if I had to cut everything out by hand, they're a tool that you really need to treat with respect. Make sure that every time the cutter leaves your hand, and hopefully every time you're not actually cutting, that you shut the guard, because it's really easy to get flinging around like this and cut something, or drop your blade, your cutter, and cut something. And we have had people cut themselves fairly seriously with rotary cutters. And I know that one customer, I mean, I wasn't there personally and it didn't happen at the store, but she dropped a rotary cutter and cut part of her toe off. So really, you want to treat these with a great deal of respect. Incidentally, that's also a reason that I personally do not recommend the rotary cutters that the guard retracts when you put pressure on it, because clearly if you drop it, you will cut something, and if you knock your hand against it, it will move the guard and you'll cut your hand. Or if you drop it on your foot, you're gonna end up with blood. So, and that's not a good thing in quilting. Okay. I also frequently get asked, well, what do you do if you have this 6.5 inch ruler and you actually want to cut a 12.5 inch strip, but you don't have a 12.5 inch wide ruler? Well, I'm going to show you. Okay, now I have moved my fabric. So every time you move your fabric on your mat, you're going to want to do another clean cut, because things shift, and you can see lining up with my fold, even in that short space of time, this measurement has changed. So I want to clean that up. Okay, now what I do if I want to cut a 12.5 inch strip is I use this ruler. I use this ruler to measure my 12.5 inches, and then I line this ruler up with that, move this one, and make the cut with this one. And you can see, easy peasy. All right. Another fancy dancy trick is cutting multiple layers. I am very guilty of this because I am congenitally lazy. So I have been known to cut as many as 8 layers of fabric at the same time. Many people do not feel entirely comfortable with that, which I understand, but if you do, this is how you do it. My edges are as lined up as I can get them. Okay, I check to see where they are, and I make sure that I do my clean cut so that I catch all of those edges. Okay, again, I'm lining up my ruler 1 inch with my fold line. And you can see, well, a fresh blade works wonders. You can see that that wasn't any trouble at all. So that's multiple layers. That's cutting with several rulers. The only other thing there is one other thing that gets asked a lot. What if I only have a 12.5 inch ruler, but I want to cut 3 inch squares? Well, they make this stuff called glow tape. We don't have any currently, so I'm just using painter's tape. But what you can do is mark off there's my 3 inch square mark. And then as I'm cutting my three-inch strip, I can cut both hands, but if you can't, it's better to turn your mat around than to pick your fabric up, because then you don't have to clean cut again. But I'm gonna just cut a bunch of 3-inch squares. And as I said, I am incapable of cutting just one layer at a time. So I'm cutting the edges, the selvage edges off. Okay, and then I've already got this marked off where my 3 inches are, my 3-inch square is, so I don't have to like count every time, because if I don't have these markers, I honestly do count how many inches I'm cutting every time, because it's really easy to mess up, and you know, measure twice, cut once. Okay, so that's cutting 101. Now we can talk about maintenance of your tools, because surprisingly there actually is maintenance involved in rotary cutting tools. I showed you how to change a blade, but you should also be aware that dust and fabric fibers do collect on your blade. You can kind of see it's kind of grimy. And so it's not a horrible idea to periodically wipe your blade off. And our notions maven, Claudia, actually suggests that when, so you can see there's gunge on there, that when you do clean your blade, you want to clean your guard too, that when you do that, you can put a little drop of machine oil on there. I never do that, but that's what Claudia says, and she is a goddess of notions, so take it for as you will. And then you just slide that on and that's changed. But it does make a difference in how well it cuts if you don't have a bunch of gunge in there. So that's rotary cutters. Rulers, I mean, I have had some of my rulers for 30 years and I've never cleaned them. But if you feel that you want to, you can just take them to your kitchen sink and use a little bit of detergent and just gently wipe them and rinse them, and they'll be as good as new. For your mat, you can use a damp cloth and just wipe it down. Or you can use this little heart-shaped mat cleaner. It's like a rubber, like, you know, sort of a jelly rubber, so that it really picks up all the grime and fiber and lint and whatnot from your mat. And keeping it clean does help with its longevity. Be sure that when you're storing your mats, you store them flat and not like laying on their sides, because they will warp, and if they do warp, it's really hard to get them unwarped. And mats are also very heat sensitive, so don't store your coffee cups on them because they will warp, and that's not fixable. I think really that's about everything that I have to share for you today. So please rotary cut in good health, and make sure you're doing it safely, use correct hand position, and so on.